Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Attleboro School Committee for Monday, November 18th. This is your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. We're going to start tonight. The first item on the agenda is an update from our Student Advisory Council, and for that, I will turn it over to Representatives Lennox and Ferguson.
Hi. So last week, the Interact Club presented at the Rotary meeting at the town restaurant. Students Luisa Harry, Jeremy Diaguar, Gabriela Pereira, Maya Bien-Name, Liam Trin, and Marley Sikaju, sorry if I pronounce any of those wrong, joined the Rotary Committee for collaboration to build a community connection between the high school and the Rotary Club. The Rotary Club members were very impressed with how the students presented and the shared experience with RYLA.
And so RYLA, which is RYLA, is the Rotary Youth Leadership Award. And the vision of it parallels our Attleboro Pride 5 core values here. And these students have created a presentation focusing on, community service, leadership development, and things along those lines. And it really showed the Rotary Club how we set our standards for ourselves here at the high school and how that carries over into the world around us. And the Interact Club will be hosting a luncheon in the spring for the Rotary Club to discuss work that has been done throughout the year. That's the end of the report.
That's it? Excellent. Mr. Larson?
I was at the Rotary meeting, and I would echo your comments. The Interact Club did a great job in the presentation, and I know the members were very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the SAC? All right. Thank you both very much. So next on the agenda is Portrait of a Graduate mural as our spotlight event, and for that I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan.
Thank you, Chairman Geddes. So tonight we're honored to thank and honor the students and staff that continue to deepen our work with our Portrait of a Graduate. Before we get into recognition of everyone that's here, I just want to take a moment to share with you how this work grounds what we do every single day. The 4 pillars, which you've heard me say before probably many times, are communicate, collaborate, innovate, and balance. And they are the durable skills that we want our students to possess when they graduate from the Attleboro Public Schools and to be prepared for an evolving workforce. In simple terms, the pillars answer our question, why? Why do we want our students to be able to give a presentation or to write a piece of writing, to be able to effectively communicate? Why do we want our students to solve a problem more than one way, to be able to effectively innovate? Why do we want our students to know how to work together to solve a problem so that they learn how to collaborate? And so the Leadership Advisory Board, including our Teaching and Learning Council and Professional Growth Council, have been working on this for years, designing all of the work behind the scenes for each of these pillars. And the concept of the tree, which you'll see tonight and is the mural that is out in the superintendent's lobby, came from our work understanding that the foundation is providing our students with academic experiences combined with our 4 pillars of communicate, collaborate, innovate, and balance. So to share with you the process and the vision, Ms. Lemieux is here with me this evening. When we first moved into the space, we wanted to make sure that we included student art, but we also wanted to make sure that it was meaningful to them and that they could participate in actually creating it and designing it and being part of it. And so we asked Ms. Lemieux and her talented team and our talented team of art educators in the district to come up with a vision, to come up with a design. And so tonight is the unveiling of that and recognition of that. Over to Ms. Lemieux.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We're so grateful to be able to showcase student artwork in a number of ways throughout the district. Last year, we installed the gallery display behind you in this room. We're looking forward to switching out that artwork soon and having a new group of students that we can honor here. Always such a wonderful experience. The next challenge we tackled was designing this mural for for the central office common area. We were able to meet as art department to come up with a plan. We used the Attleboro Public Schools mission statement, the portrait of a graduate pillars for inspiration, as well as the current visual of a tree that you saw previously. It began with a high school art student, Carissa DaCosta, under the guidance of her art educator, Lindsay Nygaard, taking that design and making it into something new, something unique. So they did that, and then other high school students then took the panels, transferred it to the panels, and painted it. The last step we did was we screwed in about 100 little hooks that you see out there. The goal for the hooks was to allow the mural to constantly change, just like a tree throughout the seasons. Each year, new leaves will adorn the tree, allowing us to showcase a new group of students. The students came together and collaborated, knowing that they were working together to better our school community through visual art. The leaves you see on the tree tonight have been designed by our middle school students. They're the first group of students we're going to showcase in that way. From printmaking to metal embossing, multimedia and texture rubbings, as well as collaging images of their own personal art, each middle school educator took a unique approach, choosing different techniques to create their leaves. Kind of like a symbol of our community. No two students are the same, no two leaves are the same on the tree. We look forward to continuing to showcase student art throughout the district. I'd like to extend a special thank you to the students who are here tonight and the other students who participated in this project, as well as my amazing team of art educators that I feel so lucky to be able to work with, and especially Assistant Superintendent Lori Regan, who I feel continues to support and showcase the Attleboro Art Department. Back to you for the next part.
So to continue on this theme of collaboration and recognition, we also reached out to Career and Technical Education Department, specifically the carpentry shop. And so with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Gay to come on up and share with us how he's going to help us to complete this project with the help of carpentry.
Thank you, Ms. Regan. Good evening. So when Ms. Regan approached us about putting a frame around the mural, sure, no problem. I kind of figured at first it would be something like we see on the back wall, something kind of standing off the shelf. And then when it's not your normal 12 by 8 inch frame, it's a 12-foot by 8-foot mural. So the students in carpentry, specifically the juniors, along with Ms. Homan, have been working diligently on taking basically rough sawn maple and shaping it into cabinet-grade woodwork that will be installed starting tomorrow. So it's been quite an experience, a great learning experience. Again, all the pillars of the portrait of a graduate were hit, and you'll soon see an encapsulated mural on that wall.
Thank you. I would be remiss if I also didn't thank personally Mr. Furtado, Mr. Parento, and the maintenance department for securely hanging this mural. It will be there for a long time, so I appreciate that and want to make sure we thank that department as well. And so at this moment, I'd like to hand it back over to Ms. Lemieux to recognize all of the students and their families that are here with us this evening.
Announce the names, Mr.
Sure. So I'll go through the names as you hear your name. If you would like to come up to see Ms. Lemieux, sorry, to get a certificate, and like Ms. Ferguson, I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. But while we have the image of the tree up, as was mentioned before, the tree was designed by Carissa DaCosta at Attleboro High School. Carissa, come on up. You can see Ms. Lemieux. The tree was painted by Chloe Brown and Maria Owlett. And I believe the leaves were done by our middle school students. So tonight we have Blake Charette and Madeline Getker from originally Brennan, now Attleboro High School. From Quello, we have Finn Stokes, Ashna Mavi, Marcus Peterson, and Gianna DeGrace. And then from originally Wamsutta, but now at the high school, Lillian Pierce, Emmanuel Ordonez, Reese Desper, and Jeremy Hermosia. Did I say that correctly?
Not my student, but
Awesome. So,
sounded good.
awesome. Thank you to all of the students and congratulations. This did come out incredible. But before I open it up for further comment, I didn't know if the administration had anything to add.
No, I do want to echo the thanks to all the students and the staff that helped to create this evening. We know that it'll be continued to be a living, breathing idea and concept for the Attleboro Public Schools for years to come, and so it's great to see that it'll just continue to change as we continue to change and grow.
Yeah, the symbolism, both of the artwork itself and the continuing change of it is fantastic. This specific project aside, I think I've said a number of times that in my line of work, I work with a lot of high schools and a lot of school districts in the area, and seeing more and more districts put Portrait of a Graduate as a priority for their district, and to know that Attleboro is at the forefront of that, and really developing that initiative is a pride point for me. And seeing the continued collaboration at all levels across the schools, within the departments. And also, I've heard members of our community talk about the school committee not prioritizing or caring about arts. And if I would challenge anyone that believes that to come to the superintendent's lobby to look at this thing in person, because it is absolutely incredible. So that was my brief comment. Does anybody else have anything to add? Mr. Larson?
No, I think they did a great job, and when you walk in there, it's very breathtaking and really helps really give a purpose behind the space. So everybody did a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Anyone else? All right, excellent. Thank you again, and congratulations. So everyone is welcome to stick around for some thrilling school committee business, but you can feel free to sneak out the back if you see fit. In the meantime, the next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report, and for that, I will turn it over to Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two quick updates, and then we have a piece of business for this evening. First, I've been, keeping the committee informed of my updates about question 2, but I know that there are people in the community that might want to know that I have nothing to say, so I thought I'd say that out loud for everybody. The state remains relatively quiet. As I indicated on Friday, there are a lot of signals coming out of the halls of power to suggest that there's quite a bit going on behind the scenes, which would explain why there's such silence, because I guess people don't want to get ahead of themselves until that's all resolved. That makes sense to me. But for the most part, we're just going to continue to wait before we message on this, because we want to understand fully where this is going. But there are a couple of things I can say, and I think should be said. First is that I think there's a little bit of confusion about what people voted on. It's to end, MCAS as a graduation requirement. It was not to end MCAS. I know there were quite a few students out there who got their wires crossed on that one. Testing is a matter of federal law. The state doesn't even have a choice about it. The voters don't have a choice about it. We have to test. We will be testing. There'll be MCAS in the spring. That's not going away. In terms of what the impact of yes on 2 really means, it's not clear to us. It certainly means that for the graduating class of 2025, you do not need to pass MCAS to graduate. That seems pretty clear, and unless the legislature takes some extraordinary act, which they have the right to do, right? They're allowed to revise the language before it's passed in early December. So we will look to see whether they do that or not. But with such a strong result, I don't think they're going to completely upend the will of the people. I'd be surprised by that. So that means that for the class of 2025, you don't need to have passed MCAS. Honestly, in Attleboro, that's not a particularly significant change. As we talked about many, many times, we have many years in which nobody, fails to graduate because of MCAS. I'm not quite sure whether we have anyone in the class of 2025 or not. But it is important to know that the messaging coming out of the state, which has been relatively silent otherwise, has been very strong in encouraging students to take the retest and to qualify for the competency determination while it's still a thing. It's pretty clear to us that whatever they're imagining for the future, there's going to be a very clear distinction between the diplomas earned under the old system and under the new system. And I think that that's tied a little bit to scholarships and other parts of the law that are tied specifically to the competency determination. So they are really encouraging schools to encourage students who don't have a qualifying score to go ahead and take the retakes and do that. So the good news is we just had retests.
The day after.
It was the day after, yes, that's right. And, we did get a very strong turnout for the retake. So I believe that we're in good standing on that front. But in case anybody's asking, we are encouraging that people do the retake. So at this point, we're just going to wait and see how this plays out. I think there'll be some clearer direction in the coming weeks, especially in anticipation of their deadline. So that's the news on that front. And, we continue to wait until we hear exactly where we're going to go.
Any questions at this point? Thank you.
All right. Next, as you know, we completed our strategic planning focus groups and feel like it's now safe to report back on what we heard. First and foremost, not foremost, but we started with taking a look at what we refer to as our tenets, right? Our mission, our vision, core values. Those were developed 10 years ago at this point. It's hard to believe it's been that long. And while we think that they serve us well and that we think that they still represent what we need to be doing, we felt like it was important to check in with the community and make sure that that's how they felt. And so that was part of those focus groups, to ask specifically about mission and vision, and the return on that was that yes, that they still are serving us well. There was no concerns about that or real desire to revise those. Next, we admitted that unlike when we did the Envisioning 2020 strategic plan, the district had never been successful in strategic planning. It had previously tried to do a strategic plan, but not recently, and again, not successfully. So when we created that one, we were really from scratch trying to build something from the ground up. We find ourselves 10 years later in a very different place where we feel like our strategic planning has served us well. We've accomplished some really important things that we don't think would have been accomplished without a strategic plan guiding the way. And so from our perspective, the next strategic plan is an articulation of what the next step on this direction we are in should be, right? There's a lot to talk about in terms of the details, in terms of like, what are the next things we need to work on? And it's important what we pick, because those are the things, you hold us accountable for. Those are the things we report our progress on. It's what we prioritize. So it's very important that we get those things down right. But before we get into the weeds on exactly what those things are, we just wanted to make sure that the community agrees with the premise that we are headed in the right direction, that we don't need to go back to square one. We don't need to reset or to start over. And we feel pretty strongly that's not where we are. But it's the community schools, and so it really matters what people think, not just what the administration think. And so we were asking that question, and again, we felt like our position was validated, that people agreed with that, generally speaking. Not that there aren't things we don't need to work on, that there aren't problems to solve, but that as a district, we are, pointed in the right direction. And then finally, we floated some conceptual ideas for what the next 3 goals would be. Again, wanted to get a sense of does this make sense to people? Do people see how it's a continuation of our work? Would this lay the foundation for a really good, strong 5 years? And wanted to talk that out a bit before it's time to sit down and write up the plan, before we get into the details, before we really get out on a limb with some of these ideas. We wanted to make sure that, again, conceptually, these things made sense to people. the good news is that what we were thinking seemed to resonate with people. I would say there was a lot of excitement among parents about the things that we were talking about and where we would like to go. So, from our perspective, the focus groups were successful in that, we workshopped a bit some of the ideas that we think we're going to be really advancing in the development of the new plan. And so as we prepare for that, so the next step, to remind you, is that in January, we'll be convening the committee that will develop the plan in all of its detail, right? Just like the last two were. And so when we sit down to do that work, we're going to enter that feeling pretty confident that what we have done so far is worth continuing, and that we have ideas about where we need to go, and now we need to work with the community on really identifying what the tangible next steps will be. So that's the next thing, and it's really something that we'll start to prepare for during the holiday season. And once we clear the holidays, that's when we'll engage the community and get people going on that important work. I don't know if what you'd like to add to that.
No, I think you summed it up. That was good. We're excited to get started again and to start to prepare us for the next 5 years. We do really think of it as our roadmap to where we want to lead the district moving forward.
Any questions or comments? Wow, you guys are quiet tonight. I'll say that I wasn't able to attend all of the focus groups, but the ones that I was able to attend, I thought were very engaging, very eye-opening. It was unique to hear from parents that I know I don't directly hear from, and I agree that there was a level of excitement, and where there wasn't 100% backing on a goal or a direction, there was some very constructive and reasonable feedback about what could be improved about that particular item. So it was. So I thought it went very well. I know that some members of the committee will be participating starting in January on the draft pieces, and certainly looking forward to seeing what those look like as well. Awesome.
I should mention that we gathered that feedback, and it'll be a starting place for those discussions. So the people who were there, should know that we really appreciate that the ideas that they shared with us, and it's going to be very helpful. So we really appreciate their coming and.
And I know that it was also a recruitment opportunity for the for the drafting group. What were the results of that? Do you feel like you have good numbers, good representative
Yeah, I would say
population?
within each of the sessions that we had at least half of the members that attended that evening wanted to continue to participate.
And is there a way that anyone that wasn't at one of the focus groups might be able to sign up to participate?
Definitely. If someone wants to continue, they can either reach out to either yourself or myself if they would like to continue, and let me know. We'll be posting the dates on the website for our future meeting, so if anyone would like to join, we'd more than happy to have them join us.
Excellent.
All right, so for my final item, I'm going to invite up Mr. Furtado, who is ready to report back on the Willett MOU.
Hey, Mr. Furtado.
So at the last meeting, you asked me to go back to the city and suggest some formal language in the MOA. They thought that the MOA actually addressed the concern. Oh, sorry, Jim. And weren't interested in altering the MOA. And I brought the language to the chairperson and offered to push back if that was the committee's wish. Or again, I think the MOA codifies current practice and isn't necessarily a concern, but I understand that some people on the committee may have a worry.
So as, just as a reminder, the city fully maintains the Willett Elementary Field, and including event reservations for the field, all landscaping, everything like that, maintenance. The concern that was raised with the language of the MOU was that it didn't explicitly say that Willett would have first priority over any other events during school days. And it sounded from the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago that really the only time Willett uses the entire field is for their field day activities. And something that wasn't in the language but was in the communication that Mr. Furtado shared with me was that even that reservation process goes through the recreation department through the city.
Yes.
And so although it wasn't explicitly listed in the MOU, they stood by that the language preceding, or the language included that said, I apologize, I don't have
The
it.
scheduling was after school hours.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
There would never be a conflict between Willett's use of the field and some outside group.
So does anybody have any questions or is, would the committee like to push back to further have explicit language listed in there? Or does anybody have any general questions or comments? Mr. Storrs?
I think this would probably help a little bit. So just to verify, if somebody ever tried to put in a request to use the field during the school day, it would go to our recreation department and they would say, no.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only concern is that if that's the case, then it wouldn't be difficult to put that in the memo. And I don't need to make this as a hill to die on. I'm fine, right? It's not that big of a deal, but I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I would simply say I don't think it's the recreation director doing this. I suspect it's legal counsel for the city. And I honestly don't know the distinction he may be drawing between the language that's in there and the explicit language being requested. But apparently he has some distinction in his mind to.
From a legal standpoint, I think they're saying it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's just another way of saying.
Same thing.
It's. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a better way to explain it, but rather than saying we will not do this, they're saying we're going to do this instead, which implicitly prevents that. Any other questions or comments? All right, in that case, I will entertain a motion for the Attleboro Schools to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the city of Attleboro as it relates to Willett Elementary School field.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay. Nay, is that what I say?
All right, any abstain? So motion passes. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Furtado.
And that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Next on the agenda is approving our minutes from the October 21st, 2024 and November 4th, 2024 meetings. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions, concerns, edits to be made? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda, we have a number of items tonight. First is a motion to accept a donation in the amount of $188.76 from Bliss Brothers to the Cross Country Gifts donation line at Attleboro High School. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $443.90 from the Varsity Boosters Club to the gifts donation sub-account for gymnastics at the high school. Motion to accept a contractual obligation in the amount of $41.70 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts Elementary School. Motion to accept a contractual obligation from Shutterfly LLC in the amount of $1,932.39 to the Brennan Middle School. Motion to send to Municipal Council for approval a prior year invoice in the amount of $427.26. Motion to approve an overnight international field trip for grades 10 to 12 students to attend Skills USA Leadership Readiness Training for Skills USA officers to attend November 24th, 25th, 2024 in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And a motion to accept the generous donation of the following books from the Attleboro Garden Club. 1, House Plants for Beginners by Rebecca De La Paz for Attleboro High School Library, worth an estimated value of $21.99. 3, Book About Planting and Gardening for Kids by Lucia Biglioni for the middle school libraries, with an estimated value of $12 each. And 5, The Reason for a Flower by Ruth Heller for the elementary school libraries, with an estimated value of $8.99 each.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is subcommittee meeting updates. We have 2 meetings to hear from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee from November 6th and November 18th. And for those, I will turn it over to Mr. Larson.
Thank you. So the first meeting on November 6th, we went through the financials. As you know, it's still very early on in the year. We're in very good shape so far. There's nothing that is really jumping out at us from a budget point of view that we feel that we need to be concerned about at this time. Obviously, we'll continue to watch. There's always some things that we know will start to show themselves over the course of the year, but at this point, we are right on track with our budget. So that was good. The rest of the meeting, we really spent a lot of time working on redistricting, and this is something that the district has been looking to do for, I know we've been talking about at least for a year or so, and it's something we haven't done since approximately 1998. Should be doing it every 10 years. We seem to be doing it every 25, so it's definitely a due time situation. Just to go back a little bit, this project really was taken off by the Operations and Infrastructure Council of the lab, and they've done an incredible amount of work with it. I'm listening to their presentation at our meeting back on the 4th, on the 6th. And you can tell just the hours and hours and hours that they've spent creating the request for proposal and interviewing potential companies to do this. I believe they had 6 companies that showed interest in submitting proposals to us. So they went through all 6 of those proposals and scored them to a rubric that they had constructed so that they knew they were evaluating them all equally and evenly. Through that process, there were 2 that basically came to the top for their recommendations that they recommended to us back on the 6th. First was Ross Haber, and the second was WXY. And we went through the strengths of both of the companies at the meeting on the 6th, and there were some some concerns about how this was going to get translated out to the community, and how each of the two different companies were going to interact with the buildings and the community here. So it was decided at the first meeting that we needed to reach out and talk to these companies again and get some more answers before we were at a point where we were ready to bring forward a recommendation. So the council reached out to the companies last Thursday. They had Zoom calls. For whatever reason, they could not connect with WXY. I don't know if they just decided they didn't want to take the time to have the Zoom call, or if they just had lost interest in Attleboro, but we had a very lengthy call with Ross Haber, and we went through all the concerns that both the subcommittee and the council had created and had, and we were all very excited with the answers that we got. And so we are very comfortable moving forward with that recommendation. So earlier this evening, we had another finance subcommittee meeting just before this meeting, in which we reviewed with the subcommittee the answers that we had at the Zoom call, and we laid out what the proposed timetable could look like, because that was, again, one of the concerns that we had. And the timetable is going to work for us. If we decide tonight to go forward, Ross Haber is prepared to engage with us right after Thanksgiving. They would start to create census information about all of our students and families and where they are. At the beginning of the year, they would start working with the district as to looking at they'll start with the layouts of the buildings. We're looking at all the elementary schools and the 3 middle schools, because part of this process is to evaluate the buildings and make sure that we're using the buildings as efficiently as we can and as properly as we can, and making sure that there isn't something that we could be doing a little bit different to help us. Through all that process, they'll help us establish a capacity, student capacity at each one of the buildings and all the elementary schools and the middle schools, so that we have a good feeling as to where we are in that aspect. Because once we know how many students we can put in each building, then we can start working with them to identify what students should be in each building based on, how close they live geographically to each of the buildings. I think it's most people are not going to have a large impact on this at all. There are some families who will be impacted this, because there are situations where we're not using the buildings quite as efficiently as we maybe could. We have new people coming into the district, but the only seat that's available to them halfway through the year is a seat that's on the other side of town. So while they're going to one school, their next door neighbor is going to a completely different school. And, so from an efficiency point of view, we're running 2 different buses out of that neighborhood in 2 different directions twice a day for the rest of the year. I mean, there's a lot of efficiencies that we really need to be able to address through this whole process. And so I think, again, having somebody look at the buildings to see how we're using them, I think they're going to agree with what we're doing in the buildings is proper, but I think also having an outside firm looking at what we're doing and giving us some suggestions as to possibly some things that we could do different is always an advantage that we should at least listen to and possibly take advantage of. We were very excited with Ross Haber to see that, unlike WXY, Ross Haber has a background in education. They have a lot of staff people that have a background in education, so they're going to look at it specifically from that point of view, which, while WXY had, a lot of, excellent skills, they didn't have that background, and we felt that obviously, considering what we're doing, would be a very important aspect to this project. So the cost, obviously, nothing is for free. The cost for this would be $67,000. As I said, we would be doing the census work right after Thanksgiving. We would do the building layout, and they would actually be coming out and looking at the buildings in the March and February timetable, and then March and April, putting together a plan as to who's going to be going where and have a draft for us to evaluate in April so that we can approve it in April and we can present it to the community in May before school gets out so that everybody knows in May potentially if they're going to be making a change to a new school starting next September. So it is the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee to move forward and recommend to the full committee that we engage with Ross Haber to do a redistricting proposal for the Attleboro Public Schools.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. Mr. Storrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so are they going to be working with and/or taking into account busing? And the other thing would be any currently planned developments, which, although it may not affect us next year, it, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, next thing you know, you might have an extra 100 students at Hill Roberts because of a bunch of.
No, that's a great
family homes
question, and I should have made that as part of my presentation. When they're in doing the census work and when they're in doing the evaluation of the buildings, they're also going to be interviewing the planning department and reviewing with them as to what building permits are on the books and are scheduled, but also to brainstorm with the planning department to see, what areas of the city should they be thinking about for future development that could obviously impact and put us back in the situation we were in. I mean, obviously, all the development in different parts of the city over the last 10 or 15 years have kind of put us in this situation where, different schools used to have a lot of kids, and then all of a sudden they got older, and now, the next development on the other side of town has influenced the other elementary schools on the other side of town, and you didn't see that coming. And so part of the project will be to interview the planning department and get a feel for them if they have strong feelings about parts of the city that will be developed in the future.
So just to verify, they will actually do the calculation of, based on the number of family homes that are going in this area, how many future students that may equate to?
It'll have an impact on the decisions that they make and where they try to make decisions. I think it's very important for the general public to realize that currently we're at about 98% capacity in the elementary school and the middle school. So, I mean, while we want to have the foresight of looking at what could potentially be developed in the future, there's also only so much extra space that we can plan into any of these buildings because we're so close to the max on many of them right now. So
that's been a concern for many years. So, yeah, thank you. That's my questions. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Yes, Shannon.
More of a comment. I'm very excited that that we've gone through this process. All of the contractors have been so thoroughly vetted, and I've just been impressed with the process leading up to this decision. And as you said earlier, this is really something that's overdue, and we all know that there are some efficiencies that we could build in, and I'm really excited to get their input to see what efficiencies are they seeing that maybe we're not seeing, and I see nothing but good things coming out of this review for redistricting.
Totally agree. Thank you. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I'm good. To Mr. Storrs' point, I remember some initial presentations back in, I think it was September, or maybe even, I think it was in September. It's one of those things that you don't even realize there's an industry out there until you start interacting with that industry, and how they use information from the planning department, census information, potential areas for growth. It's a pretty remarkable thing. I think going back to how Mr. Larson started his report, from a budgetary standpoint, we have needed to do this for a long time, but have not had the resources to put into doing it. You mentioned transportation. I think I've talked about how I can stand at my bus stop and watch 3 other buses go by to pick up other kids in our area, and some of them aren't even going to the same school. So I think that there's a lot of ways that we can develop a lot more budget flexibility with this, but also the fact that we're in a budgetary position this year to be able to afford to do this is noteworthy. And so I want to credit the administration for that as well, for that planning and foresight, because this is badly overdue, but has a lot of future benefits. Thank you.
I know that we looked at this in the past, the idea of turning our elementaries into a K through 5. I know that was pie in the sky, and based on the limitations of our buildings, we unfortunately came to the conclusion that that was not feasible. That won't be part of this, or not expected to be?
We've not asked them to evaluate it from that point of view. They could do that if we thought we had the space to pull it off, but I think it was decided that where we just didn't see that in our future. That now, some of this work will actually help that in the future if we decide to look at it again, because through this process, we're going to have an evaluation of the capacity of each building. So, if we decide at a certain point that our population is such that we could possibly do this, we now will know how many kids can we put in Peter Thatcher, how many kids could fit in Wamsutta, how many kids could fit in Coelho, and so you could. Right now, we would be thinking about it as, well, we think we could do this, and based on some different things. But this will definitely give us a lot more of a formal process of the space that we're using and how many students we think we can educate in those spaces.
But it is safe to say that come next September, the elementaries are still going to be K through 4, and the middle schools are still 5 through 8.
There is no plan to change any of that at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Menchie.
Thank you. So I appreciate that you kind of elaborated a little bit on, the process, and it is very thorough. Because hearing that we're at 98% capacity, K through 8, it doesn't give a whole lot of wiggle room in these buildings, no matter what outcome comes as to, we might save on transportation, putting kids in the right buildings or not, but if we're at 98% capacity and we're talking about, 4,200, 4,300 kids, that's not a lot of wiggle room either way. So do we think, so I'm assuming that is, and hopefully my assumption is, on target, that as part of this evaluation, it's about how we're utilizing the space and whether or not we could increase capacity within the building by simply making more efficient use of the space.
Exactly. That is one of the, there's 2 major factors in this plan, and the first one, in my opinion, is of the space in the 8 buildings that we're considering, are we using the space that we have to the best, most optimal way? And to have somebody come in and help us evaluate that, I think, is going to be key. Because maybe there's some things that we could be doing in the buildings that would increase our capacity of the buildings that we just haven't thought of. They may come into the buildings and go, hey guys, you're tapped out. And just reaffirm what we think we're already feeling. And obviously the second part is to get, to the chairman's point, you've got kids who live within 100 feet of each other going to 3 different buildings makes no sense at all. And so we're spending the money that we're going to ultimately save already by doing this project.
I agree. And it's long overdue, and it's probably more important now than ever, because having been on the school building committee when we started assessing the growth of this high school, it's safe to say whoever the MSBA used was just slightly off the mark. And by slightly, I mean like a big deal off the mark. So I'm hoping for, I have high hopes for Ross Haber to come in and.
Mr. Frappia.
Yes, more of a question for the administration. I know not many here in this room have been in the Attleboro school system for the last 25 years, but in 1999 to 2000, we had 2,777 students in the same amount of buildings. This year, or last year, we have numbers for, we're at 1,937, and even if you add in the pre-K numbers, we're only at 2,163. So I think the only question I have, and I don't want to question our occupancy rates, how are we 98% full? And what may have precipitated that number being changed over time if we had 600 more kids 25 years ago in the same building stock?
So I think the first thing that comes to my mind, and again, I've maybe been on the committee too long, is when I first started on the committee, there were a number of special ed programs that we farmed out as a district. And it was very inefficient, and it was just financially and not in the best interest of the students. So there's a lot of programs that we have brought in-house. By doing that, you've got to give dedicated spaces to a lot of those programs. So in order to do that, sometimes I'm sure we've given up classroom space to put a program into that, maybe you had 20 or 25 students in a room, and now you're running a program because it makes more sense to have it inside, but you only have 10 students in there. So, I mean, you're absolutely right as far as the numbers that you're rattling off, but I think you have to almost look at it as in a bigger picture of how many different programs are we running in each one of the buildings versus what we were doing 20 years ago? Because, I mean, I know, and I'm sure you would agree with me completely.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is
so many things that we're doing now.
Back in '99, we were still doing half-day kindergartens. So you'd be able to actually have two, so double the size kindergarten students within the same classroom space over the course of a day. We, of course, have done the right thing and gone to full-day kindergarten, which is great, but that definitely affects things as well.
Yep.
To follow that adds a lot of context and a lot of color, and that is a great, I think, visual understanding of why that happens. Because there are classrooms with 6 to 12 kids that we used to be able to jam 25 in. Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Oh, no problem. So, Mr. Geddes.
And I think 1999 was, I think the new Brennan and Wamsutta opened in fall of '99. Is that correct?
So in 1999, I see Wamsutta, Coelho, and Brennan all with enrolled 5th grade and up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it was the same building stock. That's why I only went back to 99 and not further.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. I think that the information about the capacity is really the key, I think, to what we're proposing spending the money on here, because getting a full understanding of what our carrying capacity is really, really important in that get conveyed back to the planning board. I think there's an opportunity for, like, to close a loop here where there's no longer a, geez, if we approve this development, can we get the fire and the police response there? But do we have a place? There's a cost to new development, and that cost is that we have a capacity ramification on the schools that are in that development's district. So I think that the critical part of this is making sure that all that information about what the actual capacity of our schools are and what the capacity will be after redistricting and how much overhead we have in each school is really just super critical that loop get closed with the city.
Yeah, because as the city continues to grow, we need to be ready to respond to that.
Right. Well, and the city needs to know that there are real implications along the way towards school capacity based upon where we build and where we don't.
Yep. I agree.
That's all I have to say on that.
Other questions or concerns?
One quick one. Sure. Not that I ever wish this upon us, but, knowing the developments and what's been going on and what I've seen over the last, since I moved here in 7, portable units at our schools, which obviously we don't want to do that. We want all our students within the building as best as possible, but sometimes that is a requirement. That is a necessary thing that districts have to do. Will that be looked at in any way, like if there is a need, where those units could go and anything, or is that?
That has, to the best of my knowledge, that's not been addressed.
Okay, fair enough. So that's not going to be anything looked at from this.
I did spend 1st grade not portable though. So
That's what I'm talking about.
I understand. Mr. Geddes.
I think that portable is still there.
It is.
I think, to your point, Mr. Storrs, there's a lot of potential outcomes of this. One of those may be, as Mr. Larson has said a few times, the Attleboro Public Schools are tapped out, and if you're expecting, I think Gary Rajian at the water drought meeting last week made reference to tracking since 1978 or 1980 the number of building permits every month. And noting that there have only been two notable spikes in that amount of time. But as Mr. Bennett mentioned, being in touch with the planning department about where is that potential growth. If this company comes in and says you're tapped out and based on potential growth, they may say another building or some type of added capacity within your current buildings is necessary. There is a high likelihood, as we've discussed, that families that have been in a school may be moved to another school, and that's not necessarily something that would be a Band-Aid that would be immediately ripped off. That's something that we would need to work with the administration to determine what that rollout would look like. So there are a lot of potential outcomes, and I think that the community needs to realize that could be one of them.
Yep. Oh, certainly. There will be families that will be affected by this. There are families that will be affected that currently are going to elementary or middle school in one of the buildings right now and will be moved through this process to another one of the schools. As sure as I'm sitting here, I can tell you that will happen.
And that impact will be short-term for a better long-term district-wide outcome.
Yep. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's implied, but I want to just make it explicit. Will there be some sort of a forecast or projection based on, I mean, it seems like it would be possible based on the data that they have and based on anticipated, developments or whatever, right? Will there be it would be cool to have a projection that says, using current demographic, people that are smarter than I understand these things, know based on demographic trends and whatnot, that in 2040, Attleboro is going to need this amount of carrying capacity, just so that we can be really proactive with the city about what our
The company will obviously spend time with the planning department to try to get a feel for what they think might be happening in the city in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We have not asked them to project out what we think the enrollment would be 10 years from now.
They don't have a crystal ball?
I don't think they have a crystal ball that we can hire to that aspect, but we would ask them, but I'd be surprised.
As long as we ask them about the crystal ball.
We will ask them for sure, so.
Might cost more than $67,000 at that point.
Probably worth it.
Mr. Storrs.
Thank you. You and I talked about it earlier. I just think it's important to get it out there as far as the timeline. So, you were talking about that the company would be starting right away, and that they would bring in the proposal to us, I think you said April?
April, yep,
which,
for us to approve.
Right.
That way we can present it to the community as early in May as we possibly can, so that people have definitely before school is out, they know if they're being impacted and how they'll be impacted. So.
I just wanted to make sure parents didn't think we were going to tell them in August that,
no,
hey, your kid no longer goes to
no,
the school.
and to one of the other points, and I think the chairman made it, is, there are currently people who could be riding a bus that could become a walker. There are people who are a walker who could all of a sudden be on a bus. So we have to have all of that work done in enough time so that we can bring the bus contractor on board with possibly there could be some new bus routes. We don't know that.
Sure.
Any other questions from the committee? I'm going to ask the administration if they have any concerns or questions that we should discuss that we maybe haven't thought of that.
No, and I really appreciated you stepping in and answering questions for the administration so so adequately. I think that this is long overdue. As a community, it's a mistake that we've let this go this long, and so I really appreciate that the committee is willing to get serious about this and to do the difficult work. And there will be political fallout because people will be affected, but it needs to be done. I mean, I'll just say that all the things we're talking about, certainly if we ever get to a place where we go from 98% to 100%, that's going to be a pain point. But I would also point out that if we had declining enrollment, that would be actually worse for us. In the 20 years I've been here, every time a development goes up, people scream, how's that going to affect the schools? And yet we have been steadily 6,000 kids plus or minus 200 for 20 years. And that's while the rest of the Commonwealth has been decreasing. There's a lot of demographic forces that go to help to explain that, but the bottom line here is that without some amount of growth, we're in a lot of trouble, and too much growth is a lot of trouble. So let's do what we can to keep this community right on that razor edge, and we'll be just fine.
So again, before I call for the vote, I just want to publicly thank again all the members of the O&I Council for all the hours and hours and hours of work that I know they put into that, working with Brittany and with Assistant Superintendent Sawyer. So with that, I would entertain a motion to move forward with the redistricting proposal from Ross Haber.
You've already got a motion.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. That is the extent of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Larson, and thanks to the committee and the administration for the discussion. As far as upcoming events and meetings and notices, Monday, November 25th, we will have a policy and personnel subcommittee meeting here in the Zito room at 6:30 p.m. Reminder to the community that next week is Thanksgiving, so there is only school on Monday and Tuesday. There will be no school Wednesday, November 27th through Friday, November 29th. Upon return from Thanksgiving break, Finance and Budget Subcommittee will meet here in the Zito room on Wednesday, December 4th at 6:30 p.m. And then our next full committee meeting is December 9th. The plan right now is for that to be a joint meeting with the Municipal Council in the Bray Auditorium, and we'll confirm all of those details as soon as we've got everything nailed down. Does anybody have any other new items or any new items or notices for the committee? Mr. Domenici?
Just a couple. Noticed a couple of events that took place at the high school recently this week, proving once again the flexibility of this building and that it truly is for the people. Attleboro hosted the Randolph Police Academy graduation 3 days ago, of which 2 members of that class are now Attleboro police officers. So congratulations there, and hopefully alleviating any concerns that people had that why there were so many police at the high school on that given day. It was a good thing. It was a good graduation ceremony. It was, I don't know how that came to be, but very cool that we hosted it. And then number 2, and Principal Campbell, you do a great job of getting the social media out there. I believe today was a celebration of a lot of Division I and Division II student athletes declaring their future college intentions. So congratulations to all of you. It's always cool to see things like that come to fruition.
And I believe this is our first meeting since Blue Pride Night, which was absolutely tremendous as well.
Without a doubt.
I didn't get to spend a lot of time here, but it was very crowded and very active, to say the least. Mr. Frappier?
I have one more. I just wanted to thank Thatcher Elementary School for welcoming their new therapy dog, Macy, into the school. It's a golden doodle, and that happened since our last meeting. But I want to say I think it's great that the district does that and encourages the schools to have that, and I think it's really good for the kids. So I just want to give them a shout out for doing that.
Excellent. What?
No, we didn't.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just noticed that it wasn't on the agenda, and so I was about to say, is not on the agenda, but is anyone here that would like to address the committee as part of open forum? Seeing none, I will close open forum. And any other updates? All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Have a great night.